I'm Matthew Sullivan, and I want to thank you for joining me in this very first episode of Hooked on Startups. Every week, I'll be talking to some of the smartest and most successful entrepreneurs who will share with you their real-life stories, their successes, the obstacles and failures they encountered along the way, and what they did to overcome them and stay true to their vision. Today, I'm joined by Tom Braegelmann. How are you doing, Tom?
Hey, Matthew. Good. Thank you.
Let me tell you a little bit about Tom. So Tom is a accomplished entrepreneur. He's a fund manager. He's a private lending mentor, and he offers a wealth of experience and knowledge from his 30-plus year career in real estate investing, commercial construction, land development, private lending. He's a specialist in investment analysis with an emphasis on secured investments, as well as the development of the unique National Construction Lending Alliance program. Maybe we can talk about that later. Tom and his partners have shown a consistent track record of delivering double-digit returns to their investors on short-term passive real estate investments. With Tom's leadership, his firm has funded more than $100 million in real estate transactions in the last 2 years. He's a native of central Minnesota, previously served as the owner and chief executive of a private real estate company with a portfolio of several hundred multifamily apartment units, residential, commercial complexes, single-family homes. He has a passion for facilitating and teaching collaborative real estate investing. And again, that's another thing we want to focus on. And Tom donates his time and serves as a very well-respected, highly sought-after mentor and teacher for a group of more than 400 passive real estate investors around the country. And you also founded and host a monthly real estate investment group with over 2,500 members in the San Francisco Bay Area. So, Tom, did I miss anything?
It was a good introduction. Thank you.
Well, the important thing that I want to really focus on is that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there. There's, 30 years track record real estate investing. There's the entrepreneurial, nature. You set up the National Construction Lending Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a 2,500 member meetup group. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, in your life as an entrepreneur, is there one eureka moment? What was that moment where you suddenly thought, this is it? This is, now I understand how it works. This is the moment that I can actually go onto my path.
Actually, there probably were several. The one that comes to mind is in the downturn of 2007, 2008. I had run into some challenges myself, and coming out of that, I didn't come out without a few scars. And what I really learned from that process was how important it is to have a really very clear target. And once you know what that target is, just work at it, never lose focus, always do whatever it takes to keep your attitude, do whatever it takes to turn that. I'm sure there are listeners that have had challenges in their life. If we can take those challenges and the frustration, the anger, the fear, all of those things, and bundle it up and use that energy in a positive way to really sort of catapult ourselves forward. To me, that's what worked for me when I realized the power of focus, the power of really staying on task, and then along with that came the giving back, realizing how important it is to give back, and when we give back, we get a lot more in return, and all of that. But yeah, I would just if it was one thing, it would be to really identify very clearly what the target is, and then aim at it and don't lose focus.
I agree. I'm a great believer in this whole concept of focus. I think one of the biggest problems that entrepreneurs have is the idea that they want to get involved in a business, but it's almost like every single thing becomes the shiniest object,
Mm-hmm.
and so focus and this other idea, this other concept that success really is 95% inspiration and it's 95% perspiration,
Right,
5% inspiration. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think one of the messages that we really want to get across is that if you're a budding entrepreneur, the most important thing is focus, is being able to be absolutely focused on the topic, on what's happening
Yeah,
in your business, rather than
exactly.
being distracted by all sorts of different things. But how do you learn that focus?
Uh, I think for me it was a hard lesson because of some of the things I had done previously. I did really well in real estate, and then I got involved with some business ventures outside of the country actually, and that was part of what had caused me the challenges I had. It was sort of the perfect storm when the economy turned and a couple of the businesses I had been the primary investor in, they started to slide. And it was a hard lesson to learn, but it was, I can assure you, it was learned well.
And what is the difference? So how do you feel as an entrepreneur when you take that step into being an investor in someone else's business?
Mhm.
How does that work? How does that sit? What is the difference that you notice between being in control of your own business and being a passive investor in someone else's business?
Yeah, that's it for me. It raised a whole new awareness of risk management. I doing It's one thing when I have a really clear target and I'm aiming for that myself and I know exactly what it is, or I have a team that I'm working with that I really know exactly where we want to go. That's a lot different than if it's a passive situation. And so, really understanding the risk, any potential risks behind what we're doing, if we're going to get involved in investments that are passive, then it's really important to understand who the team is, how they work, what their risk management techniques are, all of that. I feel less in control
Yeah.
when it's not me making the final decisions.
And I think the question again there is, if you're an entrepreneur, can you be an investor? So it's a very difficult thing to do, to move from being an active business owner to being a passive investor in someone else's business. So
Right.
what made you become an entrepreneur? What was there a moment, or did you know what was it that drove you to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, if I think back, I, as you mentioned, I grew up in Minnesota, and I grew up on a small farm, and we were always work was always it was taught to us well how to work hard, and within that, I saw opportunities even in high school when I started doing different things. I realized that the harder I worked at something, the more results I could get. And if I could do that in business, I would get rewarded for doing more, working harder. And so I really started early on with the idea or the realization that being an entrepreneur or working on my own was where I wanted to go. So that's really where it started. Out of college, I ended up starting a nursery right away, and eventually I went to college for landscape architecture, and I started a nursery landscaping business. And in Minnesota, there's not lot of landscaping going on in the winter time, and so I got involved in real estate by buying a couple of fixer-uppers or properties that needed renovation, and I was able to keep the crews busy. And so that's when I started to realize not only the benefit of getting back more if you work harder, but also the power of leverage and being able to use real estate as a way to leverage for income and whatnot. Eventually, I got into full-time real estate, and as you mentioned, I was a contractor developer for a lot of years, and so yeah, that was my journey.
It's amazing how you go back and one talks about these things, having been through it. It's amazing how you say, well, I set this business up, I bought a couple of properties, I kept the crews busy. But
Yeah.
those three things are gargantuan tasks to someone who is embarking with the very first step. So let's go back to your first business.
hmm
So how did you know that you wanted to open that business? How did you? I know you went to college, you studied it, but do you remember the moments where you thought, this is something I want to get involved in? How do I get started?
Yeah, what really intrigued me in it was the fact of, well, a nursery business, you can start with something as small as a seedling, and with constant care and efforts, you can eventually turn it into a good sized tree, beautiful tree that you can eventually sell. And it I guess it would be the idea of slow, consistent efforts, just continuously keeping your eye on the ball, keeping things going, and also the fact that you could, if you wanted a thousand trees, you'd plant a thousand seedlings. It wasn't really expensive up front, but it took a lot of time and effort. Eventually, it would be worth, those thousand trees would be worth a lot of money. And so I like the idea of leverage. I like the idea of that part of it. And I just knew if I worked hard and I would stay focused on it, it would come together. But I didn't, at that point, I didn't get involved with a lot of different things. I stayed focused on that one vision. And I think that's really, for an entrepreneur starting out, it's having a clear vision, keeping it relatively simple so that we don't get scattered on a lot of different fronts, a lot of different efforts. That to me is probably the one thing I would recommend, is just start simple, do something that you will enjoy, and just stick with it. Just be persistent, make it happen.
But also, you have to have a real business. So, I mean, I could be incredibly focused on this business that I've thought of, but if there's no business there, then I'm just going to be banging my head up against the wall for the next, X number of years. So, how did you know that this was the business? Is it something inside you, or did you put a business plan together? What made you say, I'm going to not get a job? There was a point where there was a real commitment to take this path. Did you get advice from other people? And where did you start?
Yeah. Well, I had very little cash to start with. And so I just basically started by coming up with, I wrote out my plan, wrote out my strategy, what I wanted to do for the next, I think I did a 3-year plan at that point, what I was going to start as far as seedlings, what I would need for supplies, materials. So I definitely planned, but I kept it simple. And even though the nursery and landscaping business grew into a really good size, successful business, I didn't I didn't jump at it with a lot of money, a lot of I didn't get into it really fast. I got into it steady and methodically, and I think that's important, because it's easy, especially if there's a lot of money available. It's easy to just start throwing money at an idea or at a project without having a really good solid plan. So there's certainly some value in starting on a shoestring, so to speak, because you really understand the value of what it takes to get to that next level, and really dedication and commitment is definitely key at that point.
And again, I completely agree with that, because I've seen so many companies that start where they're very well funded from the beginning. They take on a very large overhead. They build the company, but they haven't gone through that process of actually defining what the product is, how they're going to build it, how they're going to sell it. And so I
Hmm.
think and when we talk about entrepreneurs, everybody thinks of these Silicon Valley funded tech
Hmm.
startups that start with $20 billion in the bank. That's
Yeah.
not the case. 99 times out of 100, the startups are the businesses run by guys that want to be entrepreneurs, that are either in jobs at the moment, or out of a job, and have this burning ambition to become an entrepreneur. So these lessons about starting small are so critical, because you need to understand how to work as an entrepreneur, because it's very different working on your own to working for another company. But also, you need to understand how your business works, because if you've never done it before, every day there's going to be a new lesson for you. So I completely agree with
Yeah,
you.
and can you imagine the difference in learning a lesson if you have a small amount of cash in, put a lot of effort into it, and something doesn't go as planned? It's a hard lesson to learn, but relatively speaking, it's not gonna be um, a huge problem typically. Whereas if there's been a lot of money thrown into it, and then you start learning lessons on something where there's so much more at stake. I would prefer to and recommend anybody starting out that they start out learning their lessons as much as possible from others, but whatever lessons they learn on their own, the more they can be done on the smaller scale, and then eventually scale up, the more likely it will be a success.
So let's put this in perspective. How much money did you start out with?
With my nursery business,
Yeah.
probably about $500.
Yeah. How successful did that business become?
I ran that business for about 7 years, and eventually sold it to two of my best employees. But we ran three different construction crews, had 100,000 Christmas tree
Wow.
tree farm, had another good sized nursery. So we definitely grew it in a short period of time.
It's not just about funding. It's not about the idea. Looking back, what made you become an entrepreneur?
It would be the fact that I could get rewarded for the hard work that I put in. I could get rewarded. I was responsible for my success. That I think was probably the key thing that really got me into it from the beginning.
As opposed to working for someone else.
Yes, yeah, having a 9 to 5 job or something where there's more or less a ceiling to what can be done.
Were you born an entrepreneur, do you think, or is it something that you became?
Good question. I think it's something that I learned to to do growing up on a farm. Um,
I understand.
I'm guessing. I'm guessing there might be something that I might have been born with too, but really, I think it was just something that I think it was the path that I was put on, growing up on a farm, working hard, getting rewarded for working hard, and getting the results.
It's that direct correlation between your skill, your work, your endeavors, your determination, and benefiting from the outcome. I understand.
Exactly.
It's what
Yep.
drives us all. And my next question is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received when you were starting out in business? What's the best piece of advice someone gave you?
Um, First thing that comes to mind is cover the downside and the upside will cover itself. And this came from my mentor, George Antone, who has been really a big influence in my life, especially over the last, well, I guess it would be over the last 6 years, 7 years. And that really, by that, just it means look at the risks, understand what could possibly go wrong, and cover that. And the upside will, if it's a good idea, good plan, good strategy, the upside will take care of itself.
That's brilliant. And you mentioned your mentor. Is there a book, is there a business book that's had a really big impact on you?
This was one that I had read early on, and it's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And that one really helped solidify a lot of the things that I was thinking, but it also added a lot to it. And so that would be probably
So
one of my
what
favorite.
was so good about it? Tell me a bit more about that book. So what were the elements that really grabbed you in that?
It's about really life lessons. What does it? What are some things you can do to really have the personal change that you're looking for? It's living with the values, understanding your values, your motives, your really how you want to be. It's just a good all around book. But at least for me, it's been a really good one.
And I think it's really important for people to read books. I mean, not to bury themselves and not to try and rely on books, but just getting the benefit of other people's experience. Because in so many ways, you can take one or two things out of a book which will make a real difference in your life.
Yeah, now books and coaches, mentoring, all of that. I think what it does is it really keeps us. It bumps us back on track. Sometimes we have blind spots or we just don't see everything. And so, rather than being the lone wolf type of person, letting people who've already been down paths that we want to go, whether it's through books or coaching or mentoring or any of that. I think that's definitely a lesson I've learned.
But you believe in that. So, but with all of your success, and with all of the great things that you've done over the last 30 plus years,
Hmm.
you really believe in that, do you? Do you really believe that mentoring and sharing and that is important?
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe it more now than ever. Just the whole, what I call the cycle of abundance. We give, we get back, we do better, we give back more, um, we get more back, we do better. So it's a cycle that I just that's one of the things with my real estate investment club, the meetup that I have, or the mentoring that I do. I just can't tell you how much that has benefited me in learning so much more, in building relations, the collaborative efforts that we do. It just all ties together. It's really the glue that holds everything together.
And again, you're absolutely right, because I think as an entrepreneur, it's so easy to fall into the trap of being hot-headed and believing that you are the only person that knows the answers, and
Hmm.
you don't need other people's advice. And what do they know? And but it's amazing how insular and sort of narrow-minded you can become unless you're willing to open up and listen to the experiences of other people. And it's amazing how helpful that can be.
Well, helpful, and it just takes such a burden off your shoulders if you get to the point where everything where it's more from the abundance mindset rather than the fear and scarcity mindset. There's so much opportunity out there, so many ways where we can work together and collaborate and lift each other up, help each other be successful, and it just makes life so much easier. It makes it a lot more fun. Makes it a lot. You get alignment of interest where everybody's working in the same direction. Everybody's pulling for the same end goal. It just makes for a much better, more solid foundation for doing business.
We'll learn more about how you put together your 2,500. Is it 2,500 members, or is it more than that?
I think we're a little over 2,800 right
Wow,
now.
it's growing
Hmm.
very quickly. So you've
Yeah.
got nearly 3,000 members in your Bay Area meetup
Hmm.
group.
Yeah.
So that's quite a following.
I believe the success of that group is because of how much we push collaboration, how much we encourage people to work with each other. We encourage abundance rather than scarcity mindset. Any way that we can help each other out. There are so many people in that group that have worked deals with each other. They've done business with each other, and it's about everybody lifting every each other up to be more successful.
And is that really the theme of your book, the Bank Free Blueprint?
Yeah, it is. It's about collaboration. I teach a system about for active investors, active being the ones with deals, how to work with passive investors, passive being the ones with money, and passive investors how to find people with deals or investors with deals. So it's a system. It's a collaborative approach where both sides can understand what it takes to come together and to work and collaboratively and really create that solid, profitable deal that everybody wins in the end.
That's brilliant. That's fabulous. So my last question, Tom,
Hmm.
with the benefit of 2020 hindsight and given a blank sheet of paper, what would you have done differently?
It goes back to focus. I look back on where I got off track was when I lost focus and I didn't have those mentors or coaches alongside at that point. And yeah, I think it's understanding, identifying the target, being really clear on the target, getting focused, then being able to work, really understanding the value of bringing other people on board to help you find the blind spots, help you really assist in getting things done without having to make all the mistakes, learning from other people's mistakes basically, and just really understanding risks. Uh, once you identify all the risks, you can either mitigate them or not. If you can mitigate them, then go ahead and do the deals. But if not, stay away from it. And so, yeah, I guess that would be how I would summarize it.
That's fantastic, Tom. Well, Tom, considering you've built a multi-$100 million business from $500 over a few years is
Yeah.
quite astonishing, and it's astonishing also of the amount that you're giving back and how willing you are to share what you're doing, to collaborate, to bring abundance to other people. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Tell me, how do people get in touch with you? How do they get hold of you? How do they learn more about you? And how do they buy your book?
The way to reach me would be tom@tombraegelmann.com, or go to tombraegelmann.com for the website, and that's my blog is there, and should be some information about the different things we offer. But yeah, that would be the best way.
That's fabulous. Well, I'll have all your contact details on the notes. But again, Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew.
And we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Everyone, thank you very much for listening to Hooked on Startups.